This is the Non-Tech Podcast, conversations about education, technology, and culture, with Dr. Doug Reed and Dr. Matt Stranick. Thank you for joining us.
My name is Dr. Doug Reed, and I am located on Abagway, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people.
My name is Dr. Matthew Stranick, and I am located in Manaquesk in St. John, New Brunswick, which is situated on the traditional and unceded territory of the Wolastoqiyik Maliseet people.
Oakley dokley doo, neighborinos out there on the internet. Welcome to the latest at Non-Tech. We are literally completing a record-breaking four-peat in as much as this is the fourth episode we've recorded within about 17 hours or so. Doug, is that give or take? We're in the same time zone now, which makes things more possible. Yeah.
Yes.
So how are you doing, Doug? What are you? How's it been since the last time we had one of these episodes?
It's going okay. It's pouring rain here now, so that's making it interesting to go out and wander around in the morning.
Well, how about that? It's piss pouring rain here, as a matter of fact. Listen, folks, listen. We took from very short amount of time, relatively. We went from being like a bi-coastal show, so our typical maritime or weather chat kind of had a different vibe to it, whereas now, same time zone and, St. John compared to, a drive. What's that, like 3 hours to where you are or fewer, maybe?
I don't know. I've never done the drive from Charlottetown.
Me neither. I have no clue. In fact, I don't know how to drive. Anyway, it's close enough to have the same regional weather pattern, folks. So why don't we just get right into it? This is another redo. This is among the 4 episodes we've done. 2 of them are redos. For reasons which we may get into later, not very long story on why for that one. Just didn't have the quality control such as we would have liked. And anyway, we're sending the year out with a bang by revisiting a topic from basically a month ago at this point. So why don't you tell us about it, Doug?
What we're going to talk about today is what makes a tool or technique worth using with students. I have spent so much time being on the bleeding edge, and why are we spending students' time on this? Why are we spending our educator time on it? Sometimes it's okay to be the second group that does something. Because in education, it's not like you're going to get an award. You're not getting some giant contract. It's we need to value students' time more. Anyway, that's where we're going to go. Not that I just figured out how to put spoilers throughout it.
Sounds legit to me. No, man, I like it when the preamble, like again, as a reformed English teacher, I like it when the preamble sets up the points to follow nicely. So when you're sort of in the mentality of kind of doing that, just as a part of your, meetings or presentations or whatever, it just kind of gets you into, it's like, well, how do you do a show that's unscripted as you do? It's like, well, you have 2 people with the same training, almost similarly, same kind of background, and same kind of habits from like, okay, folks, we're going to talk about this. It's like, first you say what you're going to talk about, then you talk about it, and then you say what you talked about. And that will get you through. I'm telling you, as a former professional English teacher, you can do that to some semblance of competence. you're going to do very, very well in school just because of being able to do that. Professional educator talk here, pal. Anywho, from my time in the trenches, as it were. So with that said, where are we going with our first reference here, bud? I'm just bringing up the WordPress. We have something from...
Before we even go to the first reference,
okay, dude.
I'm going to jump back into your comment about the summary at the beginning, because it just reminded me. I found an article from Brown, 1996.
Okay.
And Brown said, a good abstract answers these questions. What was done? Why was it done? What were the results? Do the results mean in theory? What do the results mean in practice? And that is something I have been complimented on, my ability to write abstracts from various people. And I've never asked for people's opinions on my abstracts, but they're like, your abstracts are so good. And I just follow that Brown 96 article. And there's one sentence for this, one sentence for this, one sentence for each one, and I answer everything. So thank you for bringing that up. That just happened to be part of my digital clutter.
Absolutely, man. And I'll just say it warms my heart here a little bit in terms of my educatorship history, because literally, like, teaching the technical abstract, within a communications curriculum. A Canadian Newfoundland and Labrador provincial curriculum for vocational, whatever, post-secondary. I taught that on the regular for my first 5-6 years of being an educator. That was just part of like my regular. Okay, we have this topic in CM 1400, CM 1200, whatever, and that was just like, okay, So it was it was actually new for me at that point, but I kind of just value that part of my background. First third of my career really was spent just like doing business and technical writing, because it forces you to be clear, it forces you to be concise, and even more so with students who are like foreign language, who have English as a second language, you got to be even more so, because otherwise you're just resorting to talking really loudly or talking really slowly. And that's just such a shithole of wretchedness when you see teachers resorting to that with foreign and international students. But anyway, didn't go there to tear apart EFL pedagogy. There's other people who are much better for that than me. So, sorry, dude. Can I say the name of the next one, because I saw it in the notes? I was duly impressed.
Please do.
We're going to talk to Sugar Crawley and Fine, 2004. Good Lord, that sounds like, I don't know, Hollywood producers or something. Sugar Crawley and Fine, like, is that even real? Anyway. Okay, please tell us about it, pal.
So Sugar et al. Was examining teachers' decisions
Sugar Crawley
to
and
adopt
Fine.
Technology.
Okay.
And what they found is they went into that research and they thought, okay, teachers' personal decision-making is really going to be important. And they discovered, yes, of course it is. But they also discovered that there was a conflict between teacher technology adoption and school administrator thought processes. So the teacher might be on board and might say, yeah, let's do this, let's do that, let's give this a go, or let's not give this a go. And school administrators had a completely different perspective. And that conflict was at the core of a lot of whether technology is going to work or not. And I just thought it was cool that they found that and then wrote it, because it matters.
Well, I mean, so this is the K to 12 realm, correct? That we're talking to here?
Yes. Yes.
Whereabouts? United States, or like what's the jurisdiction?
I don't know. I think it was the United States.
Okay.
But I'm not sure.
Okay.
Honestly.
I mean, I would just think anything to do with K to 12 is so economically and politically fraught in the U.S. We've talked about the disparity, the gross disparity of educators compared to other professions in the U.S. Pay as little as you possibly can and just gut it so that people are exiting the public system intentionally, because it's the United States is built on such a weird puritanical idea in the first place, like this whole manifest destiny and you get what you deserve in this life, and just fuck that in the ear. But anyway, sorry, that's neither hither nor yon. I don't want to go so far into a tangent this early, pal.
Okay, well, to continue on your tangent just a little bit,
Sure.
there was a TV show that was out for part of one season called Firefly by Joss Whedon, and the fans.
I'm glad you're wrapping this into it. That's good.
The fans were called browncoats. Browncoats were a very important thing in this TV show, and the fans brought the show back. The fans kept it alive, got a movie made, and all the rest. And so every year, the Browncoats raise money for different charities, and one of them is Kids Need to Read. And what they do is all the money that's raised buys library books for schools in the United States, because some school libraries just don't have any books. So this is a way to get books to children so that they can read, because the more they read, the better their reading will be. And I just wanted to bring that up because, yes, that is another economic impact that we may not even think about, because the schools I work at. Okay, go ahead.
I'll give you one more. This is a very personal example, so I'll keep it brief. But my dad, Bob Stranek, who he's just a great guy. He's still active in his career. He says he's going to work until he's at least 70, and I have no doubt he will, because he sincerely loves what he does. But one of the things that he does, besides being a pretty cool government bureaucrat, is that he has been involved with Born to Read, an initiative in New Brunswick for like past 25-ish years. Long enough that they gave him like a really nice present or something, for his volunteer work. And it's something he's been committed to, and so, I mean, just seeing that, throughout my adult life, he started kind of getting into the volunteer stuff. And that's not even, that's one important thing that he does, but he actually does a whole bunch of other stuff. He doesn't do rec time. He just kind of has his work, do volunteer stuff, watch TV, sleep. I think that's kind of my dad's general habits, if I'm not mischaracterizing the senior Mr. Stranek. But so, what you're saying is, like, New Brunswick is an economically deprived area historically, and it's got historically low literacy outcomes. And there's just certain people who notice this and are going to plug in. And, my dad is not an English teacher. He doesn't have any kind of background that way. It's just he has fundraising and administrative skill from his time working in government, and he puts that to work for a program, to expand a program, so that whenever a kid is born in New Brunswick, I think at one point anyway, they would get this book with books, a little bag for the mom with books, children's books. So Born to Read, folks. You can Google it. Anyways.
Thank you for sharing that. That was really cool.
Yeah, my dad's a rad guy. I just, I don't give him credit ever, and I don't want. He's like, he probably won't watch this. I'm not going to say he won't watch it, because he has, watched at least a couple of these. But he's the most modest, humble guy in the world, and the last thing he actually wants is for anybody to recognize some of the cool stuff that he's done. But I'm just going to kind of put that aside out of, son's prerogative here, and I'll probably not talk about my dad again until friggin', I don't know. It's been a year and several months up till now, right? So, anyways, Bob's off the hook for a bit on terms of this show. So, where are we going with this next reference, dude? We got anything else you want to add to this particular one? We didn't speak to it at all. I just took us off on a couple of tangents, but
no, we're gonna head to Lee Soretto and Lee, the 2010 article.
Okey-doke.
The area of planned behavior and teachers' decisions regarding use of ed tech. And they had a great line where it just said, unless teachers buy into the idea, efforts to bring technology into the school will have limited effectiveness.
Go figure.
One of those.
Imagine.
Yeah, that is not rocket science, right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And they have a nice little chart here that describes planned behavior, and it talks about like if you don't change the teacher's beliefs, forget it, because the beliefs affect the attitude. And if the normative beliefs in the organization aren't on board either, then forget. There's so many different things that could go wrong, which is really nice to see the changes that have happened and then have been positive, because that means so many things have been done right. And I realized that, especially when we did that previous episode on grievances, I can be the nitpicker and see the negative thing, and I'm missing the 15 to 18 to 2,000 positive things that had happened. It's I was given a new phrase for it. My wife gave me a phrase. It was pedantic scrutiny. That's what I do sometimes.
Well played, Aaron. I think
Yeah.
that may need to be the phrase of the podcast if we don't have one yet for this. But pedantic scrutiny, folks. And anybody who's ever lived in a household with like an educator or teacher or, you know, even any like remotely academic person knows exactly what that is. That is pretty damn rad. Hey, total sidetrack. How's was I wrong in hearing that there was meant to be a podcasting endeavor associated with Aaron's grad work? Is that something that's taking shape, or is that sort of unmanifested now? Okay.
Slowly.
Okay. Unmanifested. I just made up a word. Anyway.
Yeah, it's slow. We've recorded some stuff. We haven't published anything yet.
Okay.
We've chunked it out a little bit differently than this podcast, and we think we have approval for the music we want to use for the intros and outros. So we'll get there, but it's one of those things.
Dude, I'd be interested to know, like, when it's all done and dusted, apart from the fact that I'm sure it's going to be super cool whenever and if it's ever, you know, publicly suitable, you know, ready, is what your approval process is for getting some of these clearances, music clearances, because I may just want to copy your email to people and just sort of start it around now, like, dear Tommy Stinson, dear Paul Westerberg, dear Ian Mackay from Fugazi, you know, just could I, you know, just nothing a technical writing teacher, folks, loves more than a good template. Nothing an instructional designer loves more than a good template, or a curriculum person. The problem at some institutions, which I've never worked at and shall remain nameless even if I did, was that they mistake process knowledge for educational skill and knowledge. But that's properly another basket of worms, isn't it? So we'll leave that one go for now. It's a little bit too early to be doing grievances part the 13th.
But it's
yeah, man,
insight.
That's an awesome article and it's an awesome graphic.
Yes, I'm glad you like it. I put it in there because I know that you can be a fan of the
arrows and the boxes, it's really minimalist. This is literally the kind of thing I would like cobble together on Microsoft Word, except it would be for completely something other. But it has the aspect of like a process chart or a flow chart. And man, out of like the various visual representations that get me psyched are flow charts. Like in my friggin' ridiculous, this is everything that starts out as anything that I do ends up in the notebook, which I think I've alluded to before. But a lot of it, like work stuff, all of it, it starts out very largely as just me doing a visual representation like that, like a flow chart, you know, like process A, then this, and or because, you know, and it's just, I really enjoyed doing art when I was a kid, pictures and stuff, but I was really bad at it. I mean, I'll own that. Visual art was something that I enjoyed, but I sucked at it. It's like with music lessons, I kind of played percussion for a little while in junior high, but I was just bad at it. And that's fine. You can't be good at things, all things. Writing, I was like, okay, I can do this somewhat better than the other two. So you, by natural selection, is like what did I suck at the least that I enjoyed, you know, to stick with it. So anyway, man, I'm rambling.
No problem. With this chart with this diagram. So the listeners, if they want to go to the website, they can see it. Basically, there's a list of indirect determinants, direct determinants, and they all lead to behavioral intentions. And then the behavioral intentions lead to actual behavior. And this is the perfect time of year to talk about that, because I have a plan. I have the attitude, I have the perceived behavioral controls, and my behavioral intention is to go out and exercise 5 times a week and to get control of my diet and eat less baked goods and eat more vegetables. And I think a lot of people have those types of behavioral intentions, but that still leads to the actual behavior. And we need to come back in February and March to see whether I am still following that actual behavior or whether my behavioral intentions have changed somehow. So I just love the way we tied it into the time of year, honestly, because the last time we recorded this was like a month ago or something.
Folks, there's been such holiday goings on, and we had like the 3 sort of themed episodes culminating with a 4th, and now we're just doing a victory lap almost by circling back to, I'll admit it, I had some pre-holiday beverages at that point, and I was sort of feeling Dean Martin. You ever see those Dean Martin's episode, or on television, or when he's on record? He's one of those old jazz guys, right? Like the Rat Pack, him, Sinatra, and then that crowd, and he's just like the tipsy cool guy. And when he was like convincing, when it was like when he was on, it was on. But then other times on the recording, you can hear like and it's like there's a little bit of a slur on that. So anyways, coffee and ginger ale, folks. Starting the new year, pre-new year, with caffeine. Stay home, eat your vegetables, don't quit school. Trying to think of anything else I can add to that list of things you should do.
Yeah, and I don't use should. Should is a guilt word.
Should, ought to, might, could do. I could do.
Yes.
It's all about potential, isn't it? Oh man, and I'm looking. I'm sorry, dude. Just to go on into the notes here a bit. I'm just sort of looking through. Like I've already assembled a month ago, if you can imagine, the entire WordPress post for this, and I'm looking at some of these visuals that you've got, and I'm like, man, some of these are quite good. But I'll tell you though, I'm really quite interested. Speaking of compelling visuals, your Anderson, Griffith, and Crawford and the TPAC model. That is so rad because I've heard a lot about the TPAC. It actually stands up as like a consistently sort of reliable conceptual framework, not unlike ADDIE or one of these others, for instructional design or curriculum development purposes. So I'm really psyched that we finally have this in here because I don't know much about it at all. So can you just tell me, like, A, what you find attractive about it, and maybe B, what else you might think or, feel about this model?
Okay, if you go to the website for the listeners, there's this very nice Venn diagram that describes technical knowledge, content knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, and how they all come together. And TPAC is that centerpiece on how things go together. And at the center, it's about student learning. The student learning is the highest priority. The question is, can you as an educator get them there with your current technology knowledge or your current pedagogical knowledge or your content knowledge? Like, can you get them there? Do you have the right combination of skills and knowledge to make that happen? So for the fact that they took the whole concept of student learning and put it at the center really makes me feel good. It's like, okay, these people are on track. And I believe that's part of the reason why this model is so alive. This model lives and it comes up in the literature over and over and over again. So to have people take a look at their 3 different areas of skill and knowledge, it's just so nice. It's so clear. It's so simple. And it helps inform decision making, because you might be a really good teacher and you might have great content knowledge, But if your technology knowledge is weak, there are some technology decisions you're not going to make. Because if you do, you're just going to waste everybody's time. So instead, what can you do to get more technology knowledge and then start implementing more technology into your classroom? I just love the way it's all laid out. How
Man,
nice
that
that
was
is.
rad. That was like what you just like that minute and a half or whatever that was. You could like literally put that into like a grad level online class about teaching methods in post-secondary or whatnot. And that would stand up. That was a very thoughtful, very, because speaking of Venn diagrams, love me a Venn diagram. Let me tell you what. The Community of Inquiry, COI, which we've spent a lot of time on the show, due to the fact, A, that it's awesome, B, that it's awesome, and C, that I did my doctoral thesis on it. So the cool thing that I found about it when I was sort of first introduced to it and started to kind of, make my own use of it was that you could talk to colleagues who did not have degrees in education, who had subject matter expertise in their other areas and, were teaching or whatever, but you could present that to them and they it lended itself to being well understood because of the effectual conceptual framing and the conceptual, how the simplicity of the model visually belied a complexity and potential for practice. But because it was simply laid out visually, and the conceptual models were, you could just say, okay, let's do our PD thing, kind of maybe based around this. Let's, like you said, Doug, take my classroom practice and give it sort of a form that I can align with this model. And then I can say, dear administrator, this is what my needs or whatever happen to be based on this established viable framework. So again, with TPAC, it's just sort of, it's one of those things where you could totally go to a multidisciplinary staff meeting or whatever, and with some amount of concentration, not too much to ask. Maybe for post-secondary people, it is a lot to ask. It probably is. But give them enough coffee. Don't schedule it. Schedule a meeting 2 weeks in advance. Yeah, I mean, it's just so. I completely agree, man. I was glad to see that reference there. So,
along the same line with this, if you're ever doing instructional design work, those are the three components or three areas of knowledge that you need to create a good online course. Because I've worked with content experts, but they have no pedagogical knowledge and less ed tech knowledge. So to have those three spheres of knowledge sitting there, this could really help inform that. And who knows, maybe one day we'll actually put together a Venn diagram of our own to talk about if it came to instructional design. Because I think you still do have a little bit of instructional design in your life, right?
Well, actually, in terms of what my work involves right now, I'm sort of at the point now where I'm kind of just about finished rounding up some sort of core curriculum, I guess you could say, like, sort of a sort of single body of textual knowledge that I'm then going to sort of be able to implement throughout a sort of pre-designed setup made up of various measures within both a learning management system and a learning content management system. And that's sort of something that I've kind of come to distinguish between just in the past 3 or 4 months of the year, which again, things we could talk about. So to me, the textual document, but even before the textual document, it was all predicated on having a very tight Excel sheet. On one of these episodes, we really went on at some length about how much we like Excel, right? So like for me, a curriculum map is actually the basis for everything. Starting with an Excel sheet with all your outcomes that you want to achieve and just your learning outcomes and everything. And then you can like sort of put in the work of developing a structure on top of it. Then you can start bringing in the content. But your content, it's just, you go to the internet. There's more content now by the day than there ever was in the history of human history before. And it's just like content almost is meaningless now. Ask any musician, ask any like somebody who's like doing stuff on YouTube. It's like, nope. If you content, unless it's put on a sound supportive structure involving planning, involving sort of just knowing what you want to learn over what timeline, what objectives, with all that, it's just your house is going to collapse. I mean, you won't even order the right materials. It's just nonsense. It's gobbledygook without that planning there. So that's why I just kind of chuffs my hide a bit when people kind of don't give appropriate credit to like curriculum development or instructional design. It's just like really you're just gonna take a hose of like and just it's gonna shoot out PowerPoints and you're gonna have a quiz. Are you like? Good luck with that, and may God help us all. Anyway, bit of a tangent there, pal. Sorry.
No, that was a good tangent because I feel the exact same way. It reminds me of previous episodes when we've talked about project management. Good
Yes.
project management's invisible.
Yeah.
And if you don't have project management, it's
You're so
really
screwed.
obvious.
You're dead. You're dead in the water. You're worse than dead in the water. You're already sitting in chunks inside of a shark's belly. You just don't know it yet. Is what you are. Yeah.
And we shouldn't be doing that to students. We can't just give them content. The other components have to be there. We have to have pedagogical knowledge because here's how we chunk it out. Here's how we demonstrate it. Here's how we get them to do activities. All that stuff is so vitally important for them learning. And I still think they need to play more. There needs to be more activities that involve just low risk play with whatever is going on. If you have a group that are learning how to become like wardens that are going out into the woods and doing those sorts of things, they need to go out in the woods and do stuff, right? I know that's not play as in a game, but they're out, they're in the environment, they're doing what they need to do. It's that sort of thing. We can't just throw content at people, and we're going to keep beating that drum, I'm sure. But I want to jump to the Hollins and Escuda article of 2020. It's how research informs EdTech decision making. And
oh no.
Yes, I took a deep breath at the beginning of that because jeepers creepers. What I have found in my experience is exactly what these writers have found. That the people making decisions are usually doing an internal investigation about products and strategies, but it's only locally relevant, and it's usually less than rigorous. And less than rigorous drives me bonkers because it's somebody told them whatever. And I'm just going to stop here for a second.
Okay,
hey,
that's nothing. Back. Yeah, that's nothing that a quick burst of Camtasia won't solve. Do you know? Can I first of all thank you for that? I really appreciated what you were saying, even though I was sort of monitoring my interface as my thing was going down. Not totally 100% conversant yet fully. It's like I moved my coffee cup and my camera on top of my computer shifted. That mean I had to reconnect the USB thing. And anyway, pal, I'm sure what you were saying was great. I applaud it. If you want to re-summarize what you just said, that would be rad.
Sure. In my experience, decision makers do their own internal investigations. Why do they do this? It's usually locally relevant. That's true, but it's less than rigorous. And the evidence to inform decisions about continuing use of technology or scaling up really isn't there. So often it's, oh, I went to that booth at that conference, or I went for coffee with that vendor, and oh, I think that might work because I only believe in free software. And it's like, Moodle's not free. Moodle costs a lot of money for programmers. But go ahead, please. I know you might have some experience with this too.
Well, no, I mean, you said the Moodle word, and I'll be straight. I've been kind of exploring. Again, I think I can speak to just some general activity without disclosing tradecraft of my role or anything. But one of the things within my purview as a learning specialist, as it were, learning development person, is scoping out platforms, checking them out, because right now we have a couple of things, but it's always good to know what else is out there. And I have had the opportunity in so doing to just sort of revisit Moodle a little bit, because Moodle itself is, a really, I had the way it was used in previous roles, which shall remain nameless. The service model sort of prevented me perhaps from seeing the full potential of it. But to be quite right, it's not free. Free and open are two different things. One thing you can go to with though is there's Moodle Cloud, like a hosted solution where they'll sort of handle your install and all the technical aspects for you. And then what you can get is a very limited sort of range of very tightly vetted plugins that are common across Moodle. But then, you can upload your stuff into it. You can export your stuff out of it, put it in another Moodle installation. So that's sort of really more the value of it. But I mean, you still need to pay somebody's salary to do that, even if you're going with a hosted thing, even if your thing, it doesn't have thousands of students on it. It needs to be monitored. It needs to be updated. And it's not a matter of you can just sort of, set the settings and then leave it. But this is, having spent a bit of time, doing frontline problem solving with Moodle, I can safely say that the learning designs, the simpler you can make your reliance on the features of the tool, the much easier your life is going to be, and the much easier your students' lives are going to be, because you're not trying to execute some kind of poorly conceived pedagogical experiment, or whatever. So anyways, dude, more of a ramble than was needed there, I'm sure. But you said the Moodle word.
Part of that is, yes, I did. And it was because I was part of a conversation where decision makers were saying, let's go with Moodle because it's free.
It's not
and
free.
I'm in the meeting saying,
not even a bit.
Whoa, free and open are two different things. And they couldn't figure that out. In their life, free and open were the same. And it's like, that's part of the less than rigorous decision making that has happened in my experience. And then I've been in other places where they use software like Big Blue Button and Bongo. And it's like, what are these? And it's like, oh, well, they were free. And it's like, oh, they're open. It still costs money. You may not be paying that vendor or that website, but you're still paying. It's just a matter of who are you paying and is it worth the hassle? Because so often you put one of these things together and you just kind of hack it together and it works for your one very specific thing, but nobody else in your organization can use it because there's only one login for the whole institution because you got the free version. That sort of silliness. So it just drives me bonkers. And why would we do that with students? I had an institution that shall remain nameless decided to push the online books through the library databases. And they said, oh, you need to use this. So we were putting it into online courses. Here, you don't have to buy the textbook. The copy of the textbook's there. The students can, whatever, sign in or sign out. I was helping with 5,000 students across more than 300 courses a semester. And they had the sign in, sign out contract they had signed was one student could look at the book. And as soon as
Oh
that
my.
student stopped looking, then another student could go. And the problem is I was in trying to help an instructor, so I had logged in, then no students could because one person had gone in. And it's like, who is making these decisions? You're killing me. There's less than rigorous conversation that happened. The person that made the decision got a free cup of coffee out of it from whoever the vendor was. And it ended up just having a ripple effect of, are you kidding me? So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to name the institution, but
Coffee for the win. I think, Doug, with these nameless instances, which we've both been sort of speaking to keep them hypothetical and ethical, and of the most public utility even, is that you can sort of step back, and anybody who spent, 10 years plus in organizing in a you don't, it doesn't have to be a post-secondary environment, but just any kind of educational setting. I think you can go, yes, it's just like teachers, educators, people in the classrooms or the virtual classrooms will definitely, I think, relate to some of what you've just described. It's and similarly with me. I mean, I don't mean to heap scorn about every place does the best that they can to handle their technical stuff. But again, it's just this whole thing that technical stuff. It's like ed tech, where the tech seems to take on some kind of somehow extra importance in that equation. It's just I reject that assertion utterly, and I know that you do too. So
yeah,
we're just putting it up to what did Aaron call it? Critical what? What was her critical
pedantic scrutiny?
Pedantic scrutiny.
Pedantic.
Yes, if you're watching a podcast about educational technology by two middle-aged gents like us, I mean, pedantic scrutiny and some of these issues that we brought up in some of these completely hypothetical, abstract examples may potentially resonate because we all have spent time in the trenches, or a lot of us have. So, anyways, man, bit of a digression, but
the final article I want to jump to is a nice positive article. It made me feel good. It provided a lot of positives and a lot of here's a way to move forward in a productive manner. And it's Morrow, Mills, Phelps, and Burke, the Triple S framework, ensuring scalability, sustainability, and serviceable practice in ed tech. And they talk about how if you use content, me too, which is why I put it in.
Yeah.
If you use technology enhanced media content, in many cases, this provides great benefit. And they laid out a framework to say, and here's how you do it. It was so nice to get we tried it, we learned, these are the steps you take, the steps work. Just give it a go. Try this direction. And they talk about things like scalability. Does that work for one student? Can I do it with a small group? Back in the day, they would put one computer in a classroom and say, there you go, now you have a computer. It's like, what the heck do I do with one computer? I got 37 students. Well, you figure it out. It's like, so that's not scalable. Then it went to, let's have a computer lab, but then you have to book it just the way you book the gym, or that's the way you have to book into the library, right? There's limited resources, so we get it. So how do we make it scalable so the lessons and activities all the students can do somehow? And how do you rotate students through stations or whatever? Like teachers are really good at that stuff. But then it's sustainability. How do you get the information off? How long will the information last? How long will the technology decisions happen? Will this be appropriate in future years? There's all the sustainability aspect to it. And then serviceability is the big one. Educators in general do not have time to be fixing tech problems. They don't. They need stuff that works. What we do right now really reminds me of what happened with cars in the 1920s. In the 1920s, if you wanted to go for a drive through the Rockies, right, you need to bring 8 extra spare tires because they're going to break. You need to bring all the gas with you. You need to bring these levers and pry bars to get you over the broken stumps. It wasn't fun. Now you get in a vehicle and go, and it's just easy and it works. But we've lived in a life where people have had to go and figure this stuff out, like on the fly. And if you're figuring that out on the fly with students, you're not teaching them anymore. You're doing tech support. And those are two different things. So I really like how they did it. And I know I've gone off on a little rant, but it was such a positive article and a bunch of, here's how we make it. And it's so pretty. The chart is so pretty. You could take that to the decision maker that you might be pulling your hair out with and say, here, this is a framework that we need to consider. And if it's already been published and it's pretty, maybe they'll take a look. Maybe help use that to inform their decisions. So I wonder what your thoughts are, because I talked a lot.
No, man, no. I think we've both we're given to our given tendency as Maritimers, in particularly in a post-holiday thing, man. It's all good in terms of the loquaciousness. No, man. I was my first thing was like, man, that graphic, like, yeah. I heart that graphic, man. It's very positive. And the sustainability piece is just wow. Just imagine, like, if you're one of your first 5 decisions in like a meeting about what thing to use, what tech widget or whatever LMS would just be like, what will this look like in 5 years, right? And then reverse engineering from that standpoint. Again, man, I like your thought about, like, here's something you could bring to your frontline manager or associate dean or whomever. I could see, like, in an actual like academic unit that could potentially have some merit. I could also see, based on experiences that I've had, where it would just kind of go over like a lead balloon. Like, just, what is this? Just we don't have time for this. We're too busy, like, trying to keep this thing together with duct tape and just ill will. But whew.
It's one of those, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, what makes you think you have time to do it again?
Right.
When it doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I had some.
Go ahead. Please go ahead.
I had somebody important in my life who got to a position in a school district, and yeah, there's a car driving by right now, so if you hear my dogs in the background. They implemented a new piece of curriculum software, and they had no way to export their material. And it was, what are we doing? They implemented it, and it was like, okay, now we want to go with a different vendor. It's like, okay, you have to redo all that work now. There was no way to export it, and nobody asked that question early on. So you got the teachers on board. They put all the mandates for the years, get that stuff into the database, and then it died a horrible death.
And furthermore, it poisoned.
So I'm going to let you talk now.
And regrettably, what likely could have happened, I'm not sure if this is what did happen, but that very well would have likely poisoned the well of goodwill between the administrative leadership and the faculty complement in that instance, right? Like, imagine trying to get anything through to those same group of people again. I mean, that person they'd have to transfer out. They'd have to go somewhere else, I would imagine. But I mean, who knows, right? That's what you do with problematic administrators.
You're right. That's exactly what happened.
That's what you do with problematic administrators. You don't fire them. You just transfer them out, or you give them a promotion, because administrators got to look out for other administrators, basically. But I've never been one, and when it's done well, it's done well. But anyway, just random thoughts. I don't know, man. So now we got some awesome graphics. I got to really compliment you on some of the graphics here for this one, bud.
there's two that I'd like to talk to. So for the listeners, if you go to our website, this is just the teaser to get you to go to the website. There's an old picture of Batman and Robin, the comic book characters, and it was originally on the cover of a comic book back in like the 1950s, I believe, and it's Batman slapping Robin across the face. And the number of times I've heard, "Well, I didn't need a computer when I went to school," I've actually had people say that to me, and I've had to jump in and say, "Well, that was 40 years ago. Did you have electricity? Right? Did you have light bulbs? Did you have to do everything by coal oil lanterns? Like, give me a break here. That's not the conversation that we're trying to have."
Right.
So I actually had the head of school where I was doing my PhD. I had the head of school say, "Well, I don't know why you students are complaining about not having access to a printer. I didn't even have a computer." And then I had to go in and I pedantically scrutinized where he went to school, and he went to Oxford. And I'm like, "Okay, you went to Oxford in the 1960s. And then I just started listing, you had this, you had that, you had the other thing. You had somebody typing up your own stuff, right? We have to type it up every time our supervisors want it." And then by the end of the conversation, he was like, "Yeah, okay, I see your point." And I was like, "Oh, that's good," because I had a few more things to say. And he's like, no, there's no need. It'll only get worse if you continue. And it's like, I know, but sometimes I just can't help myself. And there's only one other picture that I want to talk about. There's others that are there that are cute, and I've been collecting over the years. And I found a new image that I threw into the notes that you may not have in the WordPress, because I just found it just before Christmas. And it says, "I don't know about y'all, but I don't have any more passwords left in me."
Oh, well, I'm going to have to go back then to the document, because wouldn't want to miss that one. That sounds like a bona fide winner there, pal, expressing some amount of truth across our respective professions.
Yes, it's why do I have to? I worked at an institution where every 2 months you had to use a new password, and you weren't allowed to repeat the last 10 passwords you used. And then the IT guys would come by and say, "You shouldn't have your passwords on a sticky note." And I was like, bug off. You're making me remember 11 damn passwords, right? We all know that the person is the problem with passwords. They are the weak point. But what you guys are doing are making it worse. So change your policy, make it more human-based, or bug off. Leave me alone. Every 2 months.
In not so many words even, but maybe in so many words. Just bugger off if you can't help me out here, bud. That's
I
cool,
had been
man.
there for a while. So I have 3 more things.
I'm sure. I hope you do. So what do we got here, Ben?
The word of the podcast is why.
Yeah.
It's why are you choosing this software? Why are you choosing this EdTech solution to work with students? Students' time is valuable. Why are you doing it? Please think about the why. Please think about the why. The question of the podcast is, how can beliefs surrounding specific technology use in education change? The research is really clear. If the educators aren't on board, it's not happening. Or it's not going to happen well. So how do we change educator belief systems? How do we get the teachers on board? How do we get the profs on board? Because that's where the real change happens. That is the grassroots component of how we can make some changes.
I heartily...
The phrase of the podcast is pedantic scrutiny.
Pedantic scrutiny. I almost want to put pedantic scrutiny FTW. Maybe that'll be another one.
Then you should.
We'll make a second usage out of it. I think we gotta. I think we gotta pull that into the core concepts of the show, and then iterate outward from that. That may have to even be a tag. I really. Well done, Erin. It's just. She also gave us a nice assist with the Ghost of past, present, and future, right? That was her, yeah.
Oh, she's
Knowing
amazing. Yeah.
of things that caused that, yeah. Okay, cool beans, man. Well, so we're on the very end of a marathon for Pete. We did 3 episodes last night. Well, yesterday afternoon to last night. And then I edited in Camtasia until I literally couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. And got up fresh as a daisy-ish. And now we got our 4th one in. So this is going to clear the docks in terms of content. I don't think we're doing another one before 2024. Are we, Doug?
Oh, I don't think so. No.
Don't imagine so. Don't imagine so. Oakley dokley doo, neighborinos. I've been actually saying that in the stores of St. John unironically. And people are just looking at me. They say John, they don't even bat an eye. They're just like, I don't know. It's so appreciate you being here. Appreciate you joining us for all of this as ever. You can hit our USB, our QR code. You can donate to the show. We have a QR code. And boy, oh boy, I've got this whole trajectory planned out with that. Once I figured out I can attach a QR code to my PayPal account, it's like game over. I'm going to be doing some ridiculous experiments, and it's half performance art, but it's also like, maybe that millionaire in Shanghai is just going to really like our show and just be like, oh, drinking high priced cocktails and just watching this video because it's the internet and he can. And then I'll have my servant zip over, a quadrillion of my local currency, which is, not $750 or something. Like, that'd be enough for pizza, man.
Yeah, it would.
Right. So visit,
Okay.
Donate, contribute. We appreciate your feedback. We appreciate your listenership or your viewership or both. Take care. Bye for now, everybody. Good luck and
Bye-bye.
Godspeed for the new year. Bye.
Thank you.